Troy and I had been together since college. 14 years of building something I believed in. I am 31. I work as an ER tech. Rotating shifts, 12-hour days. People coming through those doors on the worst nights of their lives. That job changes the way you see things. It also changes the way you take care of the people you love. I took care of Troy the way I took care of everyone, without keeping score. Troy is a musician. Local band, standing gig every Saturday night at Benny's Bar, and whenever I wasn't completely wrecked from a double shift, I was in the front row. Every time. I was that girlfriend. Thursdays belonged to music. Every single Thursday, Troy would leave his day job and head straight to his buddy Gabby's house for band practice. He never missed one. He would walk through our front door right around 9, smelling like cheap beer. Quick kiss, straight to the shower. Every week, same time, same order. Routines make people feel safe. Until one Thursday, they didn't. I got off my shift earlier than expected. On my way home, I stopped at the supermarket, and while I was inside, it hit me. Gabby's house was right around the corner. They were definitely practicing. I grabbed some snacks and decided to stop in. Just a quick hello before I went home to crash. It was around 7:30 when I parked. Sun already down. I walked up the driveway and knocked. Gabby opened the door and froze. Not surprised to see me froze. Scared froze. I laughed and told him to relax, that it was just me. There was no need to look so petrified. I held out the bag of snacks. After our usual quick hello, I casually asked, "So, how is practice going?" He just stared at me. "Practice." I gave him a confused look. "Yeah, practice." Gabby started stammering. He could not seem to string a sentence together. Finally, looking incredibly nervous, he blurted out, "Oh, yeah, we canceled today." I told him okay. I will see you on Saturday, and headed back to my car. But driving home, my mind wouldn't stop. Troy had called me about 2 hours earlier, just like he always did. His exact words before hanging up were, "All right, honey, I gotta go. I just got to Gabby's." He just got to Gabby's. But there was no practice. Instinctively, I dialed Troy's number, straight to voicemail. I immediately called my neighbor, a good friend I completely trust. I asked her to peek out her window and tell me if Troy's car was in our driveway. She checked. It wasn't. It felt weird. Very weird. But I told myself not to make a huge deal out of it. I figured he would explain everything when I saw him. I rationalized it. Maybe he just went to the mall, had some errands to run. People do that. I let it slide. I was working doubles, and I told myself it was nothing. When it was time to plan our yearly vacation, it was my turn to choose. The year before, we had gone to Cape Verde because it was his pick. But I had always dreamed of Alaska. Something about the quiet, the distance, the idea of being completely cut off from everything. We booked a cabin a couple of hours outside of Fairbanks. What neither of us expected was the cell service. Messages would only come through in random spurts, sometimes hours apart. For me, that sounded like exactly what I needed. For Troy, it turned out to be a problem. One night, we were already in bed, and I noticed him checking his phone. I told him to put it away, to actually disconnect for a few days. He set it on the nightstand and settled in. But a little later, right as I was drifting off, I felt him quietly slip out of bed. He grabbed his phone and walked out of the room. I didn't say anything. I just lay there in the dark. Why the sudden obsession with his phone? Especially here. Especially now. My mind was spinning, but I didn't say a word. I preferred to just watch him. Wow. Pause for a moment. This is calculated move. We want to know, have you ever stayed silent when everything in you wanted to react? Tell us below. Now back to the story. Over the next few days, I noticed how he would wander around the cabin, stopping in specific spots just to check for a signal, walking to the window, stepping outside in the cold, moving from room to room like he was looking for something he couldn't find. He had no idea I was watching every single move. Seeing him that desperate for a connection brought something back. The night at Gabby's house. And I realized Troy had never actually explained where he was that Thursday. I had let it slide because life got busy, because I trusted him, because routines make people feel safe. With my head in a mess, but my emotions completely under control, I started thinking. After 14 years together, I knew exactly which buttons to push. So I decided to steer our next conversation, carefully, just to see how far he would take it. It didn't take long. After watching him contradict himself about the phone, and seeing his face change the moment I brought up that Thursday night at Gabby's, he told me he couldn't remember what he did that day. Couldn't remember. That is when I got more incisive. I already had him dizzy. So it was time for the unexpected attack. I just looked at him and asked, "Tell me, Troy, who is she?" Even though I had suspected it, I have to admit I was still shocked. He told me everything. He confessed he had been unfaithful, but swore it was nothing serious and that I was the one he truly loved. I looked at him and said, "Well, Troy, you know what happens now." Throughout our relationship, I had always been clear. The day this happened would be the day it all ended. No negotiations, no second chances. So our relationship lasted exactly until today. He cried. He promised it would never happen again. And I felt it. Of course I felt it. I am flesh and bone. I felt the betrayal. I felt 14 years sitting in that room with us. But the strength of what I knew about myself was stronger than the pull to stay with someone who had already crossed that line once. Because if I stayed, he would carry that knowledge forever. And so would I. And he would do it again. I packed my bags. Fastest packing job of my life. I did not want to be near him for another second. I demanded he take me to the airport right then and there. He resisted, until I grabbed the rental car keys and told him, "Good luck calling an Uber out here. By now you should know exactly where the best spot for a signal is." I flew home alone. 2 days later, my phone started ringing every 2 minutes until I finally just turned it off. I knew Troy would eventually leave the cabin and come to the house to try and save the unsalvageable. So I stayed at a friend's place. I sent him one brief email, proceed with dissolving everything we had. That was it. No calls, no conversations, no door left open. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. Weeks passed. I was getting back to my routine, my shifts, my life. Then one evening, my coworker called me sounding absolutely frantic. "Rebecca, what are you doing right now?" I told her I was just prepping my lunch for tomorrow. She asked if I was watching TV. I told her no, I don't have time for that. She took a breath and said, "Troy just played on the late night show, and he just begged for your forgiveness on live television." I could not believe what I was hearing. I told her to go to sleep, that her shift had been too long and she was hallucinating. But she insisted. We hung up, and at least 4 other people called me that same night to tell me the exact same thing. This was a national show. 3 million people watch it every night. The next day, a journalist called me to get my reaction. I could have just hung up, but I paused. I let the silence hang for a second. Then I told her, "Well, it is easy to walk away when you know the whole story. You see, when Troy broke down and confessed in that cabin, he did not just tell me that he cheated. He told me exactly who he cheated with. I decided to give the journalist the exclusive she was looking for. I calmly said a single name into the phone: Allison. Allison was not just some girl from Benny's bar. Allison was the wife of Troy's boss. The journalist went completely quiet. I finished my statement by telling her, "After you are betrayed, all that is left is goodbye, and I wish you well." And then I hung up. The article went live the very next morning. Troy had tried to use a national audience of 3 million people to pressure me into taking him back. What he didn't count on was that those 3 million people, including his boss, were about to wake up to something he hadn't planned for. The fallout was immediate. Troy was fired before lunchtime. He tried to play the victim, the heartbroken romantic who made one mistake. But the whole country now knew exactly what kind of man he was. He was not a tragic lover. He was a coward who spent his Thursdays with his employer's wife and then tried to manipulate his girlfriend on national television to save face. Word spread fast. With no job and his reputation in pieces, even his bandmates distanced themselves. Gabby and the guys wanted no part of it, especially with gigs to book and a name to protect. Troy lost his job, his music, his friends, and me, all in the span of a few weeks. People who know him say he is a shell of who he used to be, locked in his apartment, sitting with the consequences of every decision he made. He lost everything because he thought he could outsmart me. But I never had to yell. I never had to fight. I just gave him the rope, and he tied the knot himself.
Like and subscribe for more stories like this.